Yogi, and welcome back. We are officially back. This is episode 1 from our second season of our Lights On podcast, where we discover, reflect, and unpack fundamental yoga teachings to apply in everyday life. My name is Kat. I'm your host. I'm also a certified yoga teacher, passionate about practicing and teaching traditional yoga. And so, over the course of last season and this season, through this podcast in general, I really want to share this passion with you and show you how yoga is so much more than the popular yoga poses that you see online. It's a lot more than the breathing exercises and a lot more also than meditation. So, yeah, welcome back. I'm super excited to be recording our season 2. And I wanted to tell you that this season and moving forward, we'll be branching out. We'll also be inviting guests into this podcast, and we may go a little beyond yoga philosophy to discuss other topics also connected to spirituality, but also wellness and healing. There's just so many good discussions to have, and I wanted to bring them to our podcast. So the first guest that I am inviting is Lizzie from the Illuminate with Lizzie podcast. I'm so happy that she's agreed to join me. Lizzie and I, we connected over on Instagram and Threads, and we just had a number of things in common in terms of how we experience life and how even our podcast names are kind of similar. They're both connected with light and bringing light. So I'm super excited to have her join me today. Lizzie is an angel intuitive, and we'll be discussing how each of us navigated spiritual awakening, because we've both had experiences, and how this is often something that's quite misunderstood. So in this episode, we'll be sharing our own personal journeys, what we've learned, and also how you can find support, because these can be some turbulent times. So we will be keeping this conversation super informal, so sit back, relax, or just have us play, in the back as you go about your day. I really hope that this discussion brings you some light, but also assures you that you are definitely not alone. So without any further ado, we'll start. Here's what Lizzie and I talked about. Hello, Lizzie. A big welcome to you. I'm so happy to have you and initiate this discussion, this conversation with you. I know that we connected on social media and we've been chatting, and there were a number of things in common. And super grateful for your time, for you being here. We will both be discussing, I think, a theme that's very close to our hearts, which is all to do with spiritual awakening and how we can really demystify that a little bit and navigate it as well. So a big welcome. Lizzie, would you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself, what you do, and just go for it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me on. I am honored to be here, and I am so happy that you reached out. I think that social media is its own universe, and when it brings people together, it really is such a beautiful thing. And for a little bit of what I do, I am an angel intuitive. I also do life coaching, and I also host my own podcast. And that's also how we got connected. Kat and I got connected as well, just being in the podcast realm, which is a beautiful thing. And that is what we're here for today. So, and let's see if I missed anything. Let's see, angel intuitive, life coach.
Manifesting generators, both of us. So there's a lot going on always. There's a lot.
So a little bit about the angel intuitive side. I've been connected to angels ever since I was a little girl, and I had my spiritual awakening when I was about 22 or 23, and that really woke me up to the remembrance that I have always been connected to my angels, and they've always been talking to me, and really being able to accept that and actually use it as something that I could help others with as well. So I
Mm.
feel really grateful to be able to carry messages from the divine to share with others for their highest good. And then for my podcast, this is also very near and dear to my heart. And I just love being able to have conversations with others that really help awaken and ignite mass awakening and consciousness in the collective. So
Mhm.
yeah, a little bit about what I do.
Sounds good. And just a fun fact, because as I was sort of like diving a little bit deeper into your podcast and into your content,
Yeah.
our both of our podcasts share kind of like the same vibe and the same name as well. They're both named after like light and enlightenment. So I thought that was that was fun, and just
Oh,
something that I
yeah.
realized later
Yeah.
on. Obviously, even though I focus a bit more on the yoga enlightenment side of things, but at the end of the day, it is about raising vibration of the collective,
Yes,
and sort of helping people through that process. So yeah,
absolutely.
just something that I realized. I was like, oh, okay. One more thing in common, and I think it's also interesting that you said how you can clearly like pinpoint a moment that it happened for you, whereas for me was very much like a gradual process. So I think it goes to show, and we'll be discussing this more later,
Yeah,
I think, but just goes to show how different it is for everybody, and how really personal experience it's such a precious thing and such a unique thing to each of us.
yeah.
So I try to structure it because we're going to keep things very informal, everybody, if you're listening. We're going
How
to
we
keep this
like
very informal. But I did have three things more or less that I wanted to try and touch on. So the first thing is talk a little bit about our experience. Then go into a few of the lessons that we've learned, because obviously this is very much like a growth process. And then I also wanted us to discuss some ways to find support, because sometimes this can be very turbulent. It can be
Yeah.
a
Oh,
time
yeah.
in life where there's lots of uncertainty, lots of doubt. So it's important that you are as supported as you can be. So we'll finish the podcast probably with that. On that note, um, and because I do feel like we experience spiritual awakening a lot more than we think we do, or I think it's a lot more frequent that we think we do. I just feel like people have this idea that it's just this moment where everything lights up for you, and you have
Yeah,
this big
yeah,
moment of like a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's a very almost like physical religious experience to some extent, and it's
yeah.
totally not true.
Mm-hmm.
I think it can be very mundane sometimes in how it happens.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot more, common than we think it is. So I wanted to ask you to tell us a bit more about your experience, because you did have that more clear moment, I guess, in your
Mm-hmm.
life. So
Mm-hmm.
how was it like for you, and sort of what led you to that? If you can share, if you want to share.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've always been, I agree that every spiritual awakening or spiritual journey is really unique to everybody. Like for some people, it can be very gradual versus for other people like me, I had this awakening to it, and I almost thought I was going bonkers. Like I was like, what is what is happening
What
here?
is this?
But ever since I was a little kid, I would say that I've always been more on the spiritual side. And I wouldn't even have known that as a kid. I just thought it was completely normal. Like I would have imaginary friends, and I would be talking to my angels, and I would just talk to the animals and have like little ant farms and talk like just like
Mm,
very much embracing that inner child within me, like the fairies and everything like that. I was very into watching Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I thought
mm,
it was such like a fun show of like, ooh, magic's real
mm.
and everything. And as
I
I
was
got
super
old,
into it as well growing up. I
yeah,
remember like my big thing was Sailor Moon, how she
yeah,
rescued
yeah,
everybody and had powers,
exactly.
and she unlocked things
Mhm.
with the power of her heart and of love.
Yes,
Like it was very much into that
yeah,
realm as well, of like fantasy and powers and
right.
superpowers.
Yeah, and you really are able to
Mm.
connect the dots when you're older and you're like,
Oh
whoa,
yeah.
yeah, I was into that stuff. But like most people, as I got older, with societal programming and going to school and everything like that, I started to forget that magic within me. And that's completely normal. I'm not saying that school is a
Hmm.
bad thing or anything like that. It's just it's very easy to get programmed and just
Hmm.
forget certain things. So I was just starting my route toward, schooling, went to college, had this idea of like, oh, okay, I'm gonna work my booty off and
Mm-hmm.
um, get into the business realm. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but luckily I was able to do something that I was able to use some of my gifts on outside of college, which was working in the social media realm. And then that led me to working more into a bigger corporation. And I was kind of climbing, I wouldn't say climbing the corporate ladder, but it basically felt that way. And it was sucking the life out of me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, I've
meanwhal,
been there as well.
yeah, yeah,
Very much like business management, wanting to get into
mhm.
the best school because obviously like it was such a big part of my identity at the time.
Yes, yeah,
And yeah, really wanting to sort of like get to the, to the highest job or position,
yeah.
high salary, whatever. Yeah,
Mhm.
you kind of forget, and then you stop from and like, hold on, is this it then? Is
Right,
this it? Is this it?
right. Exactly. And it's so funny how our egos really want to just tell us how to live our lives. And
Hmm.
we think that's the right way. We think that's what's going to make us happy. And when I was at this job, and it wasn't like I was surrounded by negative people. I had great people surrounding me. I just knew it wasn't what I was meant to be doing. So I slowly, and also other things were out of alignment as well, where I was in situationships and like dating people I shouldn't have been dating that really weren't good for me, and really like settling for less than what I deserved.
Hmm.
And I was put in an unsafe situation this one night with this person that I felt like I trusted at the time. And I woke up the next day, and that was when it was the start of my awakening journey.
Hmm.
When I just started seeing, I remember distinctly, I was just driving um, to go get some groceries or something. And I remember seeing a bunch of angel numbers. And I've seen 1111 and everything before.
Hmm.
But all of a sudden, I started seeing 111, 222, 333, 444, literally everywhere I looked. And I was like, is anyone else seeing
Yeah,
this? Am
what's
I
going on?
going? Yeah, what's going on right now? And that's when I started looking stuff up, and I understood at that time that it was my angels communicating to me. But there was still a part of me, there was still a part of
Hmm.
my ego that was like, no, what is this? This is just a
Yeah,
coincidence. Like, there's
yeah.
no way. Because why out of everyone was I able to see these things? But then
Hmm.
I quickly learned I wasn't the only one. So that allowed me to learn more about the spiritual awakening process and everything like that. And I just had this remembrance when I was a little kid that I've always talked to my angels and they've always been there. So it's really interesting how at the darkest part of my life, one of the darkest parts of my life, is when they swooped in and they were like, here we are, we got your
Hmm.
back, we're here to help you. So let's move through this together. And honestly, without their support and without knowing that they were there supporting me, I don't think that I would have been able to get through that tough of time.
Hmm.
So I'm truly grateful for this. And ever since then, it's just been a continuous learning and growing with them. And
Hmm.
I honestly feel blessed to be able to be so connected to my
Yeah.
angels.
I think
Yeah.
that's a beautiful experience, and as you say, it does really find you when you need it the most. And
Hmm.
it's absolutely so easy to get disconnected. And as I said, like I very much was into that corporate path, and very much like you said, like it wasn't like I was completely out of alignment because I was still working for a charity. So obviously, like
Hmm.
the social
Hmm.
parts and the causes was still very important to me. Like I was still being
Ah,
driven by my heart to some extent.
yeah. Hmm.
Um, but yeah, then I also stopped at some stage, and I was like, if I think about where this leads to, I just I just don't do it. I don't want to do any of it. Like I don't want to be a manager. I don't want to suddenly like all the ambition that I had before. I was like, it doesn't make any sense anymore. I don't
Uh-huh.
want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this job anymore. Um, and for me, obviously, like having yoga already at that point in my life and being a teacher, I was like, this is the way. I just need to have faith and leap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, for me, I think it's been more of a gradual process. But felt it very
Yeah.
similar as well when you said about the angel numbers, because I started seeing lots and lots of them at some point. And I think as well, like growing up, I was always like, maybe like you, that weird kid that said things differently, or
Yeah. Yeah.
behaved a little bit
Yeah.
differently,
Yeah.
and came out with like strange things. And I always had this like knowing of like things about to happen, and I knew what was going to happen. Like I couldn't explain why or how,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's like I knew, like when you know with the heart, like it's a
Yeah.
knowing underneath
Yeah.
you. I can't really explain it, right? And obviously, like
Mm,
all my life, I was like, "You're crazy! Like it's just a coincidence. It's just because you're very observant,
yeah.
and you came to
Yeah.
that conclusion."
Right.
But always, and then I think I was about this moment where I was like, "Do you know what? This doesn't mean much to me anymore. Like I'm just doing this because I'm part of it's routine, and I'm going to work, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
evolve, whatever, and be promoted, whatever." But I'm not sure if this is for me. I also started seeing lots of angel numbers. So literally every time I looked at the time, it
Yeah.
was either 9:09:09:08:08 11:11 10:10
Yeah.
12:12. I'm like, what is going on? Like, how can I be looking at the time at exactly these times every single time, but literally
Uh-huh.
like 2-3 times 4 times a day? And I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
something is weird, something is happening.
Right. Right.
And I remember like this was after, it was especially heightened after a yoga retreat. So obviously like the meditation and that sort of
Right.
more intense connection probably prompted it. But I also
Yeah.
remember then coming back home from the retreat and taking a shower, and then suddenly like I had the answer. I was like, okay, no, you need to quit, and you're going to dedicate yourself to yoga. But I couldn't necessarily go full on, so I
Yeah.
was immediately offered this alternative of like, okay, you do have a family business, you can work with them to sort of make ends meet while you sort of develop yoga on the side.
Yeah.
And it just got, when you just have it, it's almost like dropped on you. I
Oh
don't know
yeah.
how to explain, right? It's
Oh
that
yeah. Like
sensation
a
that just,
download.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, just comes, just
Right.
completely lands on you, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, where has this come from? Like, I've
Yeah.
never thought about this before, but it's such a brilliant idea. How come I've never thought of this before?
Yeah.
So I think it started a little bit in that, but it took me years and years to make the connection.
Mm-hmm.
That it was indeed like more than I thought it was, more than me just thinking, oh, I just had a great idea. Great, thanks, pat on the back. But
Like
yeah, it
I'm
was
not.
sort of this slowly unveiling, I guess, of what's really there, what's out there, and it's
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder, because you were doing stuff that was nourishing your heart and kind of already moving in that direction. I wonder if because you were doing that is why it was so gradual rather than this like smack in the face. And it was like this download that you got and you're like, okay, this is the next thing that I need to do. Versus for me, I think I was fighting, my ego was really fighting my intuition so much that I just was straight off, quite far off the
Mm.
road. And then
Yeah.
finally I was like, okay,
They're
you
like,
need
no,
to,
we need to bring you back. Enough is
yeah,
enough. Come back.
yes, the universe
Yeah.
is like, let's bring you back, because when you steer off too far, we're gonna have to like show you, it's like a smack in the
Mm.
face rather than this like gradual download of like, hey, this
Yeah.
is the next
Maybe.
step. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe. I'm glad at this point I had yoga, because this is something that I've been practicing since I think I was 20, so it's coming up to 10
Oh
years now. And it has certainly like put me on the path to be maybe a little bit more cleansed, like if that makes sense, in terms of
mm,
like thoughts, in terms of like energies, because
yeah.
obviously it's a
Yeah.
cleansing practice at the end of the day as well that
Right.
helps you
Right.
detox. So um and when I say detox, obviously I don't mean physically, I mean energetically, I mean
Yes.
mentally,
Exactly. Exactly.
although physically as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
I wonder, so yeah, maybe you're right. It's just because I was already doing some of that
Mhm.
I was lucky to have that gradual
Yeah. Yeah.
process rather than just that one moment. But it's still very scary, because I think it gets to a point where a lot of things stop making sense, but at the same
True.
time you're still living in this world that works this way, and you on your own, I mean, you can influence people, but it takes many years. And honestly, if it's a spiritual awakening thing, it's not even up to others. It's the journey of the self, right? There's not a lot that other people can do here, but it's hard navigating this, because you're going against a lot of conditioning, and where literally everybody that you interact with is living in this conditioning. So
Yeah.
how do you deal with that?
Ooh, that is such a good question. I have, yeah, this is something that I've thought about as well, especially for others that are just spiritually awakening or that have really committed to the spiritual journey. It's hard. I mean, I think that sometimes the spiritual journey can look from the outside, at least, like rainbows and butterflies and people dancing on the beach in Tulum in like white dresses with like
Yeah.
flowers in their hair. And it's really, it can't, it can be like that. Like that can be a part of it, but that's the spiritual journey is not for the faint of the
Yeah.
heart. Like it is
Yeah.
really intense. And for you to spiritually awaken in this lifetime, for your soul to choose this path, it believes that the universe believes that you're brave enough to do so. And you
Mhm.
choosing to do this path, you believed in yourself as well before coming here. So yeah, I think navigating it is probably something that was really, if I could have given myself any advice when I first started off on my spiritual awakening journey, it's to really let go of what other people think
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
to really
Yeah.
focus on what feels right to you. And that wasn't easy for me because I had so many people around me that didn't know exactly how I was feeling. And I was like, well, what if they think I'm crazy?
Mhm.
Are, what if I can't, like, who am I going to be able to talk to about this stuff?
Mhm.
Um, I was experiencing all these magical things and I was like, I want everyone to know about this. I want my friends to understand exactly what I'm feeling, but it's not our job to awaken other people. We can It's not our job to basically force people into awakening. We can do our part by being our most authentic selves, and
Mhm.
that's the only thing that we can do to spark awakening in them if it's meant for them in this lifetime, especially if they're
Mhm.
willing for it. And I yeah, as I navigated it, there were definitely times when my ego was trying to keep me in the state of fear and the state of not progressing and not evolving. And I just remember that the more that I leaned into my ego of not wanting to speak my truth and not wanting to share what I was
Mhm.
feeling, the more painful it got for me because I knew I was denying who I was truly inside, which was
Mhm.
really sad. And the more that I moved towards my awakening, the more that I put myself out there and shared what I was feeling, the more the universe brought me opportunities and people that really aligned in my life. And when you continue to stand in your truth, you start to magnetize towards you what is truly aligned for you. And that was an amazing feeling. I remember being at a friend's wedding and one of my old friends from college comes up to me and he just randomly starts talking about angel numbers. I think we were talking about something really random and he goes, "Do you ever see angel numbers?" And this was the last person that I ever thought would
Mhm.
ever say anything like that to me. And so the fact that that happened and we just started that conversation was like this wink from the universe to me of,
Mhm.
"Hey,
There are
because you're
others out there, you're not
exactly.
alone.
Like there's other
Yeah.
people out there that are experiencing this too. And that allowed me to open my heart up more and to start to make room for what was really
Mhm.
aligned for me to come my way. And that included letting go of habits and letting go of people that didn't serve me anymore, which was also really hard.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Yeah, I quit drinking after being somebody that partied all the time and at the clubs in LA. Like for my birthday parties, I would always go to the clubs and to the bars and throw the biggest parties. And to really let that go to the wayside because it didn't feel right anymore was hard because my ego was like, but you're so fun, Lizzie. Like, come on,
Mm.
how are you going to have fun with people if you don't drink? But it just didn't feel right to me anymore. And I'm so happy that I decided to let that go because in doing so, even more opportunities opened up for me. And I was really focusing my time more on evolving rather than trying to escape certain feelings that I didn't want to feel. So
Mhm.
that was a huge, huge change for me too, a shift.
Yeah, no, I bet it's certainly a, yeah, it's not for the faint of heart, as we've said.
Mhm.
And I think also like we transitioned very smoothly into this lessons learned part of the podcast. But
Perfect.
but yeah, I think being brave and staying true to ourselves is definitely the hardest thing to do. And as you say, like that requires you to let go of many things, many people, many habits,
Yeah.
and also being very careful to what you expose yourself to. I think that that's been a very big learning for me as well, because when you go through these experiences, you then become super sensitive to everything, and you may not even notice the first time, and you may think that, oh, it's just it's nothing, whatever. I'm strong or whatever to isolate myself, but especially
Yeah.
when you're taking those first few steps, it's what you expose yourself to definitely influences you, even if you're not conscious of it. So
Yeah.
I'm super aware, and now in terms of like the groups I insert myself into, in terms of the things that I'm a part of, in terms of the things I watch, the things I read, like everything needs to be super catered to me
Yeah.
and what I stand for and what I believe in. And if it doesn't quite match, I'm not doing it. But it's taking me many years to be brave enough to say, no, actually, this is not right for me.
Oh, yeah.
No, actually, no,
Oh,
thanks. I'm not watching that. I'm not reading that. I'm not doing that
yes.
because it's not feeling
Yeah.
right. It's not feeling like it's not aligned.
Yeah.
But to your point as well, in terms of dealing with people and touching here on a subject that it's quite tricky, which is family, right? And
Oh,
how can you really do this when obviously so much of your conditioning also comes from your family. It's not that they know what they're doing, they don't, and
yeah.
the majority of it comes from a place of love, but
Yeah.
deconstructing it's very hard. And actually initially when I was going through this and I was having sort of like all these breakthroughs about how life's supposed to go, how life's supposed to live, I was like, no, they need to do this with me. Like
Oh my God.
obviously I'm right,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
they really
Yeah.
need to change. And they're not doing this. This is not good for them. But that brought me so much suffering because obviously they were not on the same
Yeah.
wavelength than I was, and I thought
They
I
were.
was doing something wrong. And they were also very frustrated because they couldn't understand where I was coming from.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
definitely creates, yeah, a lot of tension, and it took me a while to actually understand that. One, there is ego here still that needs to be worked on.
Yeah.
Um, and two, it's not my job. I cannot bring people along with me. I mean, I can, but as you rightly said, so it's more about me then becoming comfortable with myself and me living my life that I can then sort of empower others to make
Yeah.
that choice for themselves.
Yeah.
And this was also like a big lesson learned for me was
Yeah.
influence others, but not by necessarily telling them what to do or how they should behave. It's more
Yeah.
about like embodying, this lifestyle, embodying this way of life, and that will
Yeah.
then sort of manifest and reflect on people around you. Those that want to stick with you, because those that don't, then it's probably because they didn't belong there in the
Yeah.
first place, which can be
Yeah.
obviously like a heartbreaking experience. But I think one thing that we also need to bear in mind is that spirit also always has our highest good in mind.
Yes.
And so there's no right or wrong here. Like there's not a wrong option here. There's always
Yeah.
right. Um, so yeah, it's a lot about leaning into that faith as well. So that was a big learning for me as well, was to stop questioning things so much
Right.
and
Right.
questioning, whether I was as you said as well, like, am I the right person? Like, why me out of these,
Right.
out of the entire world? Why me? Why? What right do I have? But yeah, it's a lot to do with
Yeah.
faith. Is there
Yeah.
is there any other lessons learned that you think would be super helpful to share? Obviously beyond trusting, having
Yeah.
faith, letting go of things that no longer serve you, be brave.
Let's
Is there
see.
anything else that jumps to your mind?
Well, when you were talking about the whole family thing, that reminded me of when I was really pushing a lot. So I'll go back to the how you can't
Mm,
push people into awakening. I remember when I was really getting to like the law of attraction and like manifestation and
mhm,
how your thoughts and your beliefs create your reality. And every time I would come home to visit my family, and I would just it was like I was hyper focused on everything that they were doing wrong based on my
Mm-hmm.
thoughts. I was like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, they should not be doing this. They should not be saying this. Why are they watching the news? What is wrong with them?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
focusing, literally hyper fixating
My God,
on
the
every
news.
single thing.
The news. It's an ongoing battle. I'm like, please
Right?
turn that off.
Yes, exactly.
Turn
Like,
that off.
do you know how
Just do
bad
that
that is?
one thing for me. Like, do not do anything else. Just turn that thing off.
Yeah. And it was creating so much tension instead of this beautiful flow of what the spiritual journey should be like. And me thinking that, oh yeah, I'm going to change their lives by like
Mm-hmm.
really like trying to fix them and everything like that. So I would even put on YouTube law of attraction videos and like make them watch these videos and be like, maybe something will
See if
click. Like,
something gets into their head. Like,
yeah.
oh.
And the thing is, like, it wasn't, I don't know, maybe it did. I think that some stuff did help, some stuff did resonate, but it wasn't, again, it wasn't my duty to fix
Mm-hmm.
them or try to change them in a way. And who's to say that I'm the person that's supposed to awaken
Mm-hmm.
them or that they are supposed to in this lifetime? But all I could do was stand in my truth and try to be the best version of me that I could possibly be at that time. So yeah, it is really interesting because I don't know if I would have gone about doing things that way back then if I knew what I
Mm-hmm.
did now. But as far as any other lessons, let's see. I think one of another big lesson too is that, and it kind of just goes with the love piece and the having faith piece, is to really continue to be as authentically yourself as you can be. I think authenticity is one of the biggest things here. And like you were saying of your gut feelings and what feels right for you, it's really important to try to understand what your values are and
Mm-hmm.
honestly what feels right for you. Like what is meaningful to you? What is important to you about life? How do you want to show up for others? And how do you want to show up for yourself? And then taking actions in alignment with that. Because I knew that my values were love. I knew that my values were peace and to really bring harmony into everybody's lives as well, and myself too. But there were times when I didn't act in alignment with that because of my ego. And honestly, I probably could have sped up the process if I didn't listen to my ego a lot of the times. But again, that's all part of the journey as well as
Yeah.
being able to distinguish that. So another lesson learned is, the more that you trust yourself, even when other people are saying things that even when other people are saying things that you don't agree with, that are trying to sway you another way that doesn't feel right for you, still listen to yourself, even if it
Mm-hmm.
makes no logical sense.
Yeah.
Do things your way. Like seriously,
Yeah.
do things your way. Mm-hmm.
No, always 100%. And I think it's also so important to what you said of really getting clear on your values, because you will be constantly tested.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just feel like, we're all very much in a game, and the universe likes to play with us, and we just have to go along with it,
Yeah.
and overcome these challenges that are thrown into us. And I think if you get clear on your values, if you take some time of your day and just write on a sheet of paper, honestly, like, what do you care about?
Yeah.
And I would also recommend that maybe you do some I wouldn't necessarily even say yoga, but some form of mindfulness or meditation, because often we're so wrapped up in our days and in the noise around us that it's very hard actually for us to get clear
Yeah.
on what our values are. So I would say before, try to find peace and stillness inside of you, and a space that can actually help you reflect.
Yeah.
But it's super important, as you said, to get clear on your values, on what really matters to you, and try to act on them. But I also think that when you say that, sometimes ego does show up, and we don't necessarily act the way that we're supposed to, whatever that means, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
I also think that parallel to this, it's important that we release blame, because sometimes we
Oh,
get
yeah.
stuck on feeling maybe blaming ourselves that we didn't trust our intuition, blaming ourselves that we didn't think we did something that wasn't right. And blame is not useful for anything. So the idea is that you try to keep an open mind and that you accept it, you acknowledge it, and then you move on by embracing the learnings and taking note of what happened, so that next time you don't do it again. But I think it's important that we do not get stuck on thinking, oh, I did this again, or oh no,
Yeah.
I made a mistake, or oh no, I went against what I believe, because honestly, those tests keep happening. And we keep failing them a lot of times. That's why we have multiple lifetimes, and that's why we, this is just one beautiful roller coaster life, because otherwise it would be super boring, I think, right? If all the answers were given, why
Yeah.
would we even be here? Sometimes I question myself. So I guess it's just taking it with maybe not taking everything so seriously. That would be a lesson learned as well, take it
Yeah.
as an exchange, as a learning experience, as a challenge, as a fun challenge that you get to do and embrace and enjoy.
Yeah.
Just because I know that I've been stuck on blame so often, and it didn't help me at all progress on my journey.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
opposite, because actually that is a lot more connected to ego than the other side that we want to connect with. So that would be a big one for me as well.
Yeah, and that I can absolutely relate to that as well, as especially when you are able to connect the dots and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I shouldn't have done that. Why did I do this?" But these really, when you are able to learn from them and you act differently the next time a situation like this comes up, you are really evolving and progressing. And sometimes it does take a couple lessons to really have you learn that. And it's okay. I think that forgiveness is also a huge thing in the spiritual journey. And as you
Yeah.
progress spiritually, is to forgive yourself, because again, we're all human. And like you said, this is earth school. We come here to grow as souls.
Yeah.
We are souls having a temporary life experience here on earth. And whatever we do, the experiences that come into our lives are really to help our soul grow. And again, it is important, like you said, to find a way to come back to mindfulness and coming back to your center and what really makes you feel grounded and at peace, so that you are able to make those decisions that come from your heart center. And spirit, this is also something that you touched on earlier. Spirit always has your highest good and your best intention at heart. And being able to understand that is a huge thing. I remember when my spirit guides were really telling me to do yoga. And I was like, but I love running. Like, at that time, I loved doing weights. I loved really high intensity things. And I was like, okay, I'll do some yoga like every now and then. And they kept telling me, no, like focus on yoga. But my ego was like, but yoga's not really a workout. Like, I don't really know what. And
Can be. Allow me to
yes,
disagree as a yoga teacher. It's hard.
exactly.
It's
Yes,
hard.
right. No. And I've learned that as well. It's a physical, mental, emotional journey.
Yeah.
And you are able to strengthen physically, emotionally, and spiritually through it. So it is a beautiful thing once I opened myself up to it. But again, when I resisted it for so long, I got, even my physical vessel was really deteriorating, because there is a way to connect your mind and body together. And at that time, I was really trying to find balance between that. And again, yeah, my spirit guides were like, hello, like, listen to us. We're trying to help you out. And finally, when I
Yeah.
did, it all made sense. So it really, however your spirit guides or your angels speak to you, whether it be through angel numbers or your intuition or just this feeling, synchronicity, trust it. Trust it even when your
It doesn't
ego is
make
like, don't do it. Yes. Yeah. Even
sense.
when your ego's like, don't do it, trust it, please. Coming
Just
from
listen to it.
experience.
You will regret it. Trust
Yeah,
us. You'll
yeah,
regret it at some
yeah,
stage.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's super interesting, because actually when you say that spirit sort of told you to go and do yoga, and at the time, obviously now it's obvious for me, but at the time it wasn't. When I first signed up for yoga, I was really struggling with anxiety. That's actually something that I've been going through my entire life. But at that point, it was really, really bad. I think I was on my third year of my undergrad degree, so lots of exams, lots of like coursework.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was super intense, and I remember that I struggled breathing. I experienced like kind of like rapid heartbeats, as if it wasn't beating at the same pace every time.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, literally out of the blue, one day, I just decided to type onto Google yoga classes near me. Literally, I at that point I had never tried yoga classes before.
Yeah. Yeah.
That had never crossed my mind that yoga could even be a thing for me. I mean, I was aware that the practice existed, but a bit
Right.
like you, I thought it was just this kind of like strange woo-woo practice that people stretched on. I wasn't really, it didn't really make much sense to me at all that I was suddenly interested in like typing literally on Google as if something moved me, yoga
Right. Right.
classes near me.
Yeah.
And literally like the first hit on Google, I clicked, I went to the studio, I signed up, and that's,
Yeah.
I've been there, well, practicing now online, but ever since.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. And at the time I was like, but what has really like passed me, and what happened? And now it's obvious that, it was guided. It was something that
Oh,
was meant to
absolutely.
happen.
Yeah.
And very much, and I believe very much something that is part of my soul journey. Um,
Yeah.
because that was how I found like this practice that immediately clicked for me, and it was like like a missing piece, it fit,
Yeah.
click.
Yeah. Yeah.
um and it's so interesting. So yeah, do you trust however these signs land on you or come to you? Yeah, definitely listen to
Yeah.
them, because it's for your highest good, and you
Yeah.
never know what you could be unlocking when you trust
Absolutely.
yourself.
Absolutely.
Because it can be quite scary, and you can find yourself maybe losing a lot of opportunities, or losing a lot of
Yeah.
people, or losing a lot of things that you think were important to you, but then it's because there's something better, it's because there's something higher waiting for you on the other side. So you will
Um,
never be worse off. On the contrary,
yeah.
it's impossible, it's inevitable. So yeah, do trust those signs, those inklings, those niggles that
Absolutely.
we have, that we experience.
Yeah.
um but
Yeah.
and I think we kind of started talking about this a little as well, regarding like ways to find support, because again, I think that sometimes, even though we may be put on this journey, we're not quite there mentally, physically, emotionally, energetically, to really be able to handle it, or
Mhm.
to handle it in a healthy way, right? Because this can
Yeah.
go many ways if we're not really prepared for it, and we don't allow
Yeah.
ourselves the time, and we don't have the support network that we may need. So it is important, I think, to have somebody that you can talk to. I think it's important to have a guide, or someone that has maybe gone through similar experience. But what would you say that for you were your best sources of support?
Yeah, that is interesting. So, when I did have my spiritual awakening, I was watching a lot of YouTube videos of other people that had also spiritually awakened, and that felt very comforting to me. And then also on TikTok, I started posting videos on TikTok, and I found a spiritual community. So honestly, a lot of it was through social media for me at first,
Mm-hmm.
so just connecting with others and knowing that others are experiencing similar things. Um, Even if it may not be exactly the same thing, it just
Mm-hmm.
felt more, it made me feel more at peace. And as I opened myself up to people in the real world, like not on social media as well,
Mm-hmm.
just talking about my truth, the universe really brought me people that aligned with me. And it was really me putting myself out there as well. Even whether it was connecting with someone online or connecting with someone at a yoga studio, and really asking my angels, please bring me people that align with me, that align with my purpose, my vision, my soul mission. And you just have to let it go and it'll come. So, yeah, I think it really is putting yourself out there, trusting yourself to guide you to the right people, and allowing yourself to open up and have those conversations that really intrigue you, that really
Yeah.
are nourishing your soul. and that ignite this fire within you. I remember going to the first yoga studio that I did in LA when I was living there, and I didn't really know what to expect. It was my first yin yoga class ever in
Mhm.
person. And the teacher at the time was just, as she was talking through this yin yoga class, it was like this spiritual journey that she brought us through. And I was like, holy crap, I was not
Mhm.
expecting this. And then we ended up being friends. So it really is just, again, trusting what feels right for you, whether it be if a yoga studio doesn't feel right for you, go to a different
Oh
one,
yeah.
try a
Mhm.
different instructor, whatever feels right for you. So yeah, I just had to open myself up, put myself out there, connect with others, but finding your community isn't just going to be like, oh, snap your fingers and they're there. It really, like, finding that support is also you stepping into your own power as well. So the more you do that, the more it's going to come in. And yeah, any energy that you put out there is going to be given right back to you in one way or another.
Yeah, I think it's so important what you said, because it's important that we are open to receiving things, and often we're not, even when we
Yeah.
ask for things. But are we truly ready to receive that? And
Yeah.
sometimes we're not. And I think that that speaks to the point of, obviously you want to find support and you need to be supported, but you also need to put yourself out there to
Yeah.
find support, because without aligned action, this means nothing really. It doesn't
Yeah.
have much practical application at all. So if you do feel like you need help, you need to seek it. You need to go out and find it. You need to go out and put yourself out there, as you said. And 100% in terms of what you say, if a teacher in particular doesn't resonate with you, if a place in particular doesn't resonate with you, and if doesn't matter if it's a yoga studio, if it's a Pilates studio, whatever
Yeah.
it is, whatever
Yeah.
practice you're into, stop going there. It's
Yeah.
again, you are right. You probably are right. And it can
Yeah.
be right for many people, but it's wrong for you. So that's all it matters.
Exactly.
So honor that, and
Yeah.
stay true to that, even when it comes to ways of finding support, because not everybody is meant to support everybody.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
something is it's true as well. Even as a yoga teacher, we often say that yoga is for everybody, but not everybody is meant to be your teacher, or you're not, as a teacher, you're not meant to teach everybody.
Yeah.
So it's important that even when you go out of your way to find support, you still stay true to yourself. And if something does not resonate, then be
Yeah.
brave to walk out and say, actually, this didn't work out. I need to find help some other
Mhm.
way. But I also think it's really beautiful that you're able to find as well a community online. And I know, well, these are real people, but you're not really having the connection is a bit different than maybe meeting face to face or in person.
Yeah.
Like, we know that,
Yeah.
but I think it's still important that we we do try to find these spaces for us, and we try to create our little communities, whether that's through Instagram or TikTok. And I think sometimes we may underestimate the power that these communities have, but they make us feel seen, and they make us feel held, and they make us feel less lonely, because it can be a lonely path sometimes. So by
Mhm.
all means, do not think that just because you're only finding support on TikTok, or you're only finding support on Instagram, that's not valuable, because it is. It's so valuable, because as long as you feel held and seen, then that's a really long way to help you find to ground yourself. I think to anchor yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is something that I was talking about my friend with as well, of how this journey can be very lonely sometimes, especially when you're going through this huge initiation, but
Mhm.
trusting that some people call it the isolation period. It's really for you to refine your frequency and for you to get to know your
Mhm.
true self better, for you and your soul to really come into union so that you can draw in the people that are meant to be in your life.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's definitely this this balance, right? That this line that sometimes is quite difficult to thread, because you're not too sure if you're going too much on one side or the other, but it's between you finding time to really allow yourself to flourish, to blossom, and for you
Yeah.
to allow yourself time to trust yourself, trust your intuition, because it does take time, and you'll question yourself many, many times. You'll keep questioning yourself always, I think,
Mhm.
until you've reached probably like the end of the ladder,
Enlightenment.
um, exactly. So there is that, but there is also space for you to connect with other people and share experiences with other people. And yeah, I think that's super important. I think it's also super important that we find things to help us ground ourselves. So obviously for me, and I'm biased, that's my yoga practice, is the meditation that I have every day. But I
Mm-hmm.
think especially when we're on a certain wavelength, then it can be very hard to sort of lose track of the real world, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
it can become really hard for you to live normally and to be like, for instance, a normal member of society, and to behave and very much still buy into some things that you have to buy into because you're a part of this world and you're very much living in this world. So there's only so much escaping that you can do, right? So it's important to find ways to ground yourself and to keep it real, basically, because otherwise you'll always be up in the clouds, and that really won't help you thrive in the way that you can thrive if you stay real in the real
Right.
world.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's so, yes, that is so important because we can get through the spiritual awakening journey, we can get really lost in those higher three chakras that are like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I am so connected to the heavens right
Mm-hmm.
now. I feel like my higher
But you
self is
still need to do grocery shopping. You still need to pay
exactly.
bills.
It's
You
like
still,
you,
you're
right.
still a human being at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
So it's really about like taking that and integrating all that you've learned, all the soul lessons, all the wisdom from your past lives, and putting that into action in this life. But again, we're in physical vessels and that's what we're here
Yeah,
to do. So yeah, it is super important to ground back into reality and allow yourself to, yes, you have to, there are some rules that we still have to play by, but still being able to integrate the lessons that and
yeah.
the what are truth into the real world.
And I think also like one last point for me would be because when you said, and that's really the key word, is integrating, but like do not force yourself to integrate anything and do not rush this process because
Hmm.
it can take a long time. And it's
Yeah,
okay because it's a big change and it's a big thing. Even though you can have like smaller awakenings or one big awakening moment, but it's still a lot for you to process. So, and we can become very it can become this sort of sense of urgency almost of having everything figured out, of having
yeah,
suddenly, because now we have access to to this other dimension. Now suddenly you've got all
yeah.
the answers, and everything is figured
Right.
out, and but it's not true. I think we're equally as lost as other people. It's just that we can then find that guidance somewhere, and we're able to rely on ourselves a lot more, just because we know that we're held and supported by something else, something higher than us. But at the end of the day, it's not like you're going to have all the answers immediately. They will come and they'll manifest
Yeah,
themselves when
yeah.
time comes. So I would be very gentle with myself, and I would be very careful when it comes to rushing through that integration,
Yes.
because it doesn't come immediately.
Yes, definitely. And another point that I want to add to that is as you progress and as you find these keys to unlock and all these things, you also find that there are things that come up that still need to be healed. So
Mm-hmm.
your journey is a continuous
Yeah.
healing process as well. And for you to ascend and reach those higher states of consciousness, you have to go, there are times where you have to go down, like deep
Mm-hmm.
down
Yeah.
to release and transmute that so that you can truly reach that higher state of consciousness. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree.
Yeah. Absolutely. And again, the beautiful thing at the same time is that if you don't do it right the first time, you're going to have a second time, you're going to have a third time, and you can either look at this like, oh my god, no way, or oh my god, yeah, I get to do this again and I get to get it right next
Yeah,
time. So
yeah.
there, I guess there's two perspectives here, and I'm not sure which one I'm leaning more towards, whether the first one or the second one. But yeah, it's never the end. You're never wrong. It's just a chance for you to do it again, and to really elevate yourself even more and continue on your process of evolving. And on that note, I wanted to ask you as well, how can you support other people, going through a spiritual awakening? How can you, because you've mentioned that you were a coach, so how do you bring everything into practice?
Yeah, so I help support others going on their spiritual awakening journey or their spiritual journey in general by really helping them connect with their higher self, their team of light, which includes their spirit guides and their angels and the ascended masters of the highest truth, compassion, and love into their lives so that they can take the path of least resistance and be on their most optimal timeline. So I really am able to help people understand the messages that they're receiving, understand how to trust their intuition more, understand what path really feels right for them and how to find the courage to take that path. So that is how I support others. And I think one of the biggest things for me is really being able to bridge the angelic realm to physical reality and having others connect to their angels, because that is so near and dear to my heart. And I think that angels are a huge help in this realm. So that is how I support others in their journey.
Amazing. And if people want to access that support, where can they find you? How can they access it?
Yeah, so you can reach me and connect with me at Illuminate with Lizzie on Instagram, and I have some links on my profile. I also have a podcast if you want to dive
Go
into
check
those
it out.
episodes. Thank you. If you want to dive into those episodes as well, it's the Illuminate with Lizzie podcast. I'm on TikTok. I have a YouTube that I'm also working on as well. So you can reach out to me in any ways. The best way of contact is to get through to me on Instagram, though. So again, at Illuminate with Lizzie.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Lizzie, for your time, for your insight, for sharing your experiences. I'm not sure if there's like one last message that you feel you should communicate to the collective today, or if you feel like I've done my mission today.
Ooh, I just feel like authenticity is really coming up for me a lot lately, and just going to leave you all with trusting yourself and honoring your unique path by staying true to who you are. Do not let anybody tell you otherwise.
Otherwise, exactly. I agree. And yeah, thank you so much again for taking the time, for really holding or helping me hold this space for this discussion. Hopefully, it helped you that is listening navigating this period that can be really turbulent, but incredibly, incredibly rewarding if you stick to it. And as Lizzie said, if you stay true to yourself and you trust your instincts and you stay true to your feelings and what you think is right for you. Thank you so much, Lizzie, again.
Thank
And
you, Jen.
I'm sure
It
we'll
was
continue connecting and discussing on our paths very, very soon.
definitely, it was an honor being here. So thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation. A big thanks to Lizzie for her incredible insights, and also to you for listening as always. I hope you enjoyed the content and that you feel reassured that you're not alone and there are plenty of ways for you to seek support. If you have any questions, any comments, and would like to get in touch, I would absolutely love to hear from you. As always, I'm always looking for feedback and understand how I can make this podcast even better and even more relevant to you. So follow me on Instagram, TikTok, or Threads at Yoga Full Studio. I would love to connect. Next week, I'll be back with a guided relaxation session to help you unwind and release tension. So I will see you there. In the meantime, love and light. Bye.